There's been a lot of change in the sports card grading landscape in recent years. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my process of deciding which grading company to collect and grade with. What is going on, everybody? Thanks for joining me back on my channel, Brutus on Baseball. In the sports card world, there have been three major grading companies going back 20 to 30 years: PSA, BGS, and SGC. They've essentially become household names in the sports card grading world. But recent events have caused me to rethink my grading and collecting strategy. There's been recent rumors around SGC. A lot of videos going around YouTube by collectors about some of the best graders at SGC being poached by PSA. Or it's not really poached, I guess. They're under the same company umbrella, of course. But the turnaround times at SGC have gone up, and a lot of the rumors is that their top graders have moved over to at least learn, for the time being, from PSA. And then, of course, there's BGS, who can only be described as incompetent over the last number of years. For anybody who's watched my channel, you know a little bit about my grading strategy, but I'll repeat it here. I collect Hall of Fame rookie cards, vintage, pre-1980s, what I call the expansion era, 1980s and 90s, and then modern cards ever since 2000 of guys that are future Hall of Famers in my mind. And in addition to that, I collect cards specifically for the set registry at PSA, most of which are 1990s insert cards. But in terms of this video, what's important is all of those Hall of Fame rookie cards, I try to collect one from each of the big grading companies. For vintage cards, I'll just collect PSA and SGC. And that's because Beckett, their vintage grading arm, is BVG. For some reason, they decided to separate it out. Anything 1981 and after is graded by BGS. Anything 1980 and before is graded by BVG. And you just ask most card collectors out there, and they will tell you that the reputation between these two arms of the grading companies, even though they're both under the Beckett name, are vastly different. Cards graded by BVG don't get a lot of recognition in terms of how accurate the grades are likely to be, and the resale value is just not there. So for vintage, I collect PSA, SGC. But anything modern, and by modern I mean 1981 and after in my mind right now, I collect BGS, PSA, and SGC. And of course BGS, I try to collect the best subgrades possible. But what I'm here to talk about in this video is maybe it's time to rethink that strategy. Now, one method of dealing with a strategy, of course, is to not grade cards or not collect graded cards. And there's a lot of people out there who either never got into grading cards, or there's a lot of people that have started to roll back into that form of collecting. And by all means, I think that's a great idea. You don't need a grading company to tell you how good a card is if it's just for your personal collection. But I have to say too, I made some recent baseball card history videos, and in those I delve into card grading. And it's essentially the way it is in this day and age. Card grading is here, it's ingrained in the hobby, and so that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you are going to grade cards, what is the grading strategy? What is it that I'm going to go for in the future? Now, the easiest one to talk about is PSA. There's a lot to like about PSA. The consistency of the slabs and the strength of their brand through time, 30 years almost. And they have a lot of stability, a huge financial backing. But they're also my least favorite of all the grading companies. Why? Well, generic labels is one. There's something to be said about that consistency over time, but at the same time, these labels are just boring. Like, they've done a few things to actually spice them up in recent years, adding some stuff that actually helps with counterfeiting. But in my mind, these red box labels with just basic typing on it is really boring to me. You could spice that up a little bit. Inconsistency in grading is another problem. There's a lot of people out there that say that they crack cards, resubmit it, get widely different grades. And that's something that you hear a lot about with PSA, but not as much about with the other grading companies. The customer support has always been limited, and there's a lot of frustration with people out there for the set registries. Just a couple of things that, even though they are the grading juggernaut when it comes to sports cards, there's a lot of things not to like about them, even though the vast majority of collectors seem to use them. And then the add-on for me is what I talked about in this video that I made about PSA and why I think the future of the PSA grading method is questionable. The main subject of that video is the bell curve in grading. The fact that you have to have a bell curve in order to make the really high-end cards worth it. The way that PSA functions, all of these bell curves have been moving over from modern cards. You look at the 2018 Ronald Acuna Jr. or Juan Soto Topps flagship rookie cards, and you see the incredibly high population of these cards, most of which have been graded 10s or gem mints. And PSA's refusal to include a mint plus or 9.5 or a pristine grade like all the other grading companies just makes it so that the 10 becomes that expectation instead of an excitement to be able to get one. It makes the 9 pretty much worthless, where you see a lot of raw cards selling for more than 9s do, and it's removed the excitement or novelty of getting a gem mint card. Now, I know there's some people out there that argue that PSA has a basic grading scale, that's why it does so well. You might be right, but I think in the day of the modern, ultra-modern cards and going into the future, you've got to have more distinction between a 9 and a 10. There's got to be a couple different levels there, and I think the other grading companies do this really well. Now, moving on to the next company that I grade. SGC has always been a favorite of mine. It's a company with a boutique feel, but without the boutique prices or usual lackluster customer service. Their niche is in the vintage card collecting world. And I've always loved the slabs. Even if the flips themselves haven't always been that great, the slab and that tuxedo look and branding, to me, it just makes it look fantastic. And ever since they reformulated their grading scale to be the 1 to 10 and added the mint plus 9.5 and the pristine gold label, in my opinion, they couldn't be beat. But that is when all of a sudden this grading company built from the ground up was bought out by Collectors Universe, the same company that has PSA under the same umbrella. And of course the questions start flying. What does this all mean for the future of the SGC brand? Well, when a buyout like that happens, that's when the story gets all the hype. But people tend to forget that often the buying company doesn't make any changes right away as they get to know how their new asset works. And it's usually a couple years later, after the story has died down and right about where we are now, that changes are actually made or begin to be processed. As I mentioned earlier in the video, there's been a lot of rumors lately about the slowdowns at SGC, which is one of their big things that has separated them from other companies. And Peter at SGC has not come out to say anything to address these. For anybody who follows SGC, you know that Peter is a very candid person. He gets down with the collector, talks to them at their level, including how he did when SGC was bought out by Collectors Universe. And what he does really well is just to calm everybody down and address their fears. But now with a lot of video content creators coming out with questions about SGC, the turnaround times, what happened to their graders, there's been no word from SGC. And it makes me wonder what's going to happen to SGC in the next year. My opinion of SGC in the last year or two since the buyout was that you're buying high quality cards. There are a number of things that separated SGC. Grading consistency and turnaround times and customer service were those things. But if the brand were to disappear or merge, would I or would you continue collecting the SGC brand or pay the typical price for them? And those are the kinds of questions that you have to start asking yourself a little bit. Again, if I'm collecting just for my collection, I'm going to hold on to that card. I know that the card in that SGC slab is likely to be a high quality card with respect to the grade that it got. But if you're looking at resale in the future, you might have to ask these questions and wonder if you should continue buying SGC the same way that you have been. And then there's BGS. For collectors that may have gotten into the hobby in the past 5 years or so since COVID, you may be wondering why I'm even talking about Beckett. But for a period of about 15 years in the early 2000s, BGS was the go-to company for modern cards. That's why you see so many huge cards from the 2000s, early 2010s in Beckett slabs. And even before the grading, they had an even bigger presence in the hobby, going back to the 80s with the Beckett price guide that every collector from that time period knows very well. And there was a lot to like about Beckett. Their slabs themselves were probably my favorites out there. They felt really sturdy and protected. And then the subgrades were a hobby favorite for a very long time because it basically gave you a glimpse into graders' notes without having to get the notes. Although recently those subgrades seem to have handcuffed them in a way from making needed changes. And in addition to that, having the first 10 pristine grade helped us separate them for some time to make it a much more desirable card than just a gem mint. but there were downsides too. Having a 9.5 as the gem mint grade became a problem for new collectors for whatever reason, and several attempts at rebranding and establishing a new updated grading system not only fell flat, but actually had collectors enraged, up in arms over it. And Beckett seemed to spend more and more effort getting into the TCG space than they did about sports cards. Add on to all of that the accusations of fraud, grade tampering, all the way to the top of the company over the last number of years. And what made everything worse was their communication fell off to near nothing during all of this time, making collectors wonder if there was anyone even at the helm with the skills necessary to give the company any semblance of forward direction. And so in the last 5 years, even the most loyal BGS collectors have had to face reality and question whether collecting BGS slabs was a good idea anymore or not. I still have a ton in my collection, but even so, I've been slowly unloading any extras that I have, or cards with below average subgrades, meaning for a gem mint, let's say, there's a 9 subgrade in addition to the 9 5s or 10s. So this is the story that's led me to the crossroads I'm currently at. I've been collecting the same way for about 25 years now between those 3 major companies, and the current situation is exactly why I decided to do that for so long, to not put all my eggs in one basket and to protect myself in case one of those companies disappeared at some point in the future. But right now, we're actually in a place where it's not too far-fetched to imagine that 2 of those 3 companies could be gone in the near future, at least from the perspective of how we've known them and used them for decades, what we've understood them to be. The continued silence from Beckett and the recent silence from SGC in the midst of so much rumor really does speak volumes to me and make me question what's going on behind the doors of these 2 companies. And it's made me wonder what to do with my collection. You can tell from my opinion of PSA that I shared that the idea of writing solo with them isn't really on the table. I could continue to collect BGS and SGC and ignore the questionable futures of both, but that just feels like I'm sticking my head in the sand, not something I really want to be doing. I could look at starting with a new grading company. There's TAG and HGA and GMA and ISA and so many others in recent years, but none of those seem to have the foundation to give me comfort that they'll be around, if they still are at all in coming years, or that they're that consistent in grading. So the reason I decided to make this video is because I realized I had actually made my decision without really knowing it. About a year ago, I bought my first CGC card, a Justin Verlander rookie, because it was cheap. When I got it in my hands, I was truly surprised, first time seeing it, by how great the slab actually looked and felt, and how incredibly clear the plastic was that made the card the center of attention, which is really the way it should be, in my opinion. It's about the card, not the grading company. Now, I am not the first to share these sentiments. They have been expressed by a lot of content creators, guys like Neo, for example, for years now. But for some reason, they've generally been ignored by sports card collectors. I'm sure there's some people out there that have been collecting CGC, but you just don't see it all that often. You don't see a lot of CGC reveal videos or the like, for sports cards at least. Now, CGC has been in the business of TCG and comic books for a very long time, but it's only recently that they put much effort into sports. When I first saw their slabs, I told myself there was no way I would ever buy one of those green monstrosities. We all remember these. But then they changed to CSG for their sports card grading wing and the slab design with it. It wasn't bad, but I still waited. And eventually they changed to CGC with the similar slabs, and they looked great. They used the Mint Plus and Pristine grades that I believe are necessary for the times we're in, just like SGC does. And I love the look of the Pristine labels on this one. SGC is great that they have that gold border, but there's just something extra special about seeing the CGC Pristine cards, where they've completely changed the label entirely. The color, the format, it just really stands out, and I don't think that they look hokey at all. I like them a lot. And so over the last year, I've actually slowly started to buy more and more slabs of CGC, until I just realized that I had essentially made the switch without knowing it. I still buy PSA, I still buy SGC, though now with a little bit more thought to which cards I'm buying in SGC holders and how they're likely to hold up if the brand changes in the future. And I still do buy some BGS if the subgrades are fantastic, close to pristines or pristines, but I'm not sure how much longer I'll even be doing that. I prefer to buy CGC now than BGS, and I must say often the prices are way better. I bought a number of rookie cards, a 94 SP die-cut Billy Wagner and a CGC 9, Derek Jeter rookie cards, a Topps, and a Stadium Club, both in 10s, and these prices were fantastic compared to what I would be paying for not only a PSA, an SGC, or a BGS with subpar subgrades. So this is telling me that not a lot of people are still looking at CGC cards. And why the time is right for me. If I'm going to make this transition, I might as well do it now before people start taking notice or they really get hot in the sports card area. And it's not only just about the look of the slab, the flip, the price, it's the company itself. CGC has been around for a long time. If anybody can compete with PSA in the future in terms of resources, it's going to be CGC. Probably not Beckett with how little attention they're giving sports card grading, and definitely not SGC the way they were. And now, who knows what they're going to be under the Collector's Universe umbrella. So now I just need to figure out how much of my BGS collection to sell and how much to keep, because they don't really feel like they'll have a significant presence in the sports card market for much longer at all. I certainly don't want to give them away, and there's a number that I'm sure I'll hold on to because of how great the subgrades are. But I'll probably start letting them go back into the market, and going into the future, I'll still buy PSA, I'll still buy SGC under the right conditions. CGC I'm going to buy a lot more of going forward. In BGS, I might actually only start buying when it's a really great price on a pristine card or something like that. So that's my 2 cents on the recent grading strategy and what's been going on in the hobby. This is leading straight into the National, my first one that I'm attending coming up. And so it's really going to be interesting to see how many CGC cards, at least in the sports area, are available and for what prices. If they're actually that cheap, I might start gobbling them up a lot more. Let me know in the comments down below what your grading strategy and your opinions are. I'd love to hear if you collect CGC cards and what your thoughts of them are as well. In the meantime, keep talking baseball, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you around.